Unmute as you need to say something. And we'll let Judge Dunstan join us as she can. But in the meantime, I'm going to call the meeting to order and welcome those of you who are with us. And thank you for taking time out of your days. The members of the subcommittee are hereby advised of their duty under the State Ethics in Government Act to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts, and are instructed to refrain from participating in any manner coming before this subcommittee with respect to which there is a conflict of interest or an appearance of any conflict. You've been sent the agenda and some other materials. Does anyone see a conflict at this point? None appearing, we'll proceed with our meeting. And if some conflict comes up, let me know, please. Peter, we'll turn it over to you for the director's report.
Thanks, George. I just have a couple items. One is related to the addendum that we sent out this week. But I just wanted to thank everybody for being a part of this study and looking at our rules. I think this is the right time for doing this. We talked about these ideas briefly at our last in-person retreat, which was in Raleigh, which what feels like now a lifetime ago, I think was in the fall of 2019. I think that's right. And so we had at least a brief discussion on these different ideas, but we didn't have a plan for studying these. And so now I think the timing is right to look at this with the development of our software program. Alice and I got a preview of it today. It's looking very promising. We're hoping to have that rolled out, done by the end of the summer with, for CLE to be rolled out for the next CLE year. I think that it's going to be a really good product for the staff and also for lawyers, but this is a great chance for us to look at our rules and see how to improve the efficiencies internally and externally, and have that built into the product as it's developed. But the second item, the other item I wanted to talk about real quickly was we did receive an article to the Publications Board, was submitted an article from Judge Dietz that was about the CLE program that listed some, he had some concerns with how CLE is working in North Carolina. I didn't send it to the board because there were some issues in the article that I wanted to talk with Judge Dietz about. And so I did last week or the week before, had a long conversation with him, and he's going to rewrite and resubmit an article. So once we receive that, I will send it to the board for you guys to see. And I don't know if the journal is going to, when or if how they will publish it, or if we would want to put a response in. I think that will certainly depend on whether, what the structure of his new article will be. But he was very receptive to chatting with me, and we had a great conversation. And so I'm just keeping you guys apprised of that there was an article that the second version I will share with the board before publication, so we can determine how and if we would want to respond in the journal to it. And then the item from the addendum is the last matter in the director's report, which is, while we're going to look at a big overhaul potentially of our rules, and we'll have to talk about that today, in the short term, the way our rules are written now, we tend to struggle sometimes with collecting sponsor fees from sponsors timely as it relates to after a completion of a program. And this proposed rule that I sent to you that I'll share here for you to see would, I don't know how to have it open, but it would allow for any sponsor who does not timely pay the sponsor fees after a program within 90 days would not have any new course applications approved until those fees are paid. We would like to get that rule moving along through the council and publication on this potentially parallel track with looking at our big review, because, just in case the review doesn't make changes that we are hoping for, we still need to have this rule in place to help receive those payments. The staff has spent a ton of time trying to play bill collector, and that really hurts the efficiency of the program. And we feel that payment within 90 days is reasonable, and this would act as an incentive for sponsors to get the payments in time, at the risk of not having future courses approved. And so that's the rule that we're proposing for your consideration today, that if you were to agree, it would go before the council in April and then publication, and then approval in July, adoption in July by the council, and then to the court.
To set this up for discussion, would someone move the adoption of the proposed rule and its submission to the State Bar Council?
So moved.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Now, is there any discussion?
Is the fact that I wondered, would we not want to prepay, or that they don't know how much they owe because it's per person and they don't know how many people are coming in?
That's right. Yeah, they can't prepay because it's based on the attendance and the number of people who attend the program. They would have to find that out after the fact. At the program.
Could we not do a minimum?
Well, that's something I think we're looking at in the review, in the rules. A bigger change that Deborah and I are going to propose is moving away from attendance fees in general. So the payment comes at the front end of any process and not something that is contingent on the number of attendees. I think that would make this process a lot easier.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, is it fair to say that this is sort of a stopgap until we can review our rules?
Yes, I think it's fair. If the review of the rules ends up recommending a switch over to something like a course application fee, then this rule would not be necessary. But in the short term, as the rules are written now, we think it's necessary.
Peter, could you get a credit card authorization in advance as security for payment?
I don't know that we have the ability to do that now and to hold the kind of credit card. That's an interesting idea, to where once they submit the attendance report, the charges are created automatically. Right now, we don't hold any credit card information from anyone. It's all from a third party processor. And so I don't know what their capabilities would be. But that's an interesting idea.
I have a question. What are the rules regarding who pays those fees, whether it's the individual or the sponsor?
So if the sponsor is in North Carolina and the course is a North Carolina course, and they are charging a fee for attending, then they are required to pay the attendance fees, which are called the sponsor fees. If it's an out-of-state course, or it's a course that's not being offered for a fee, then that attendance fee gets charged to the lawyer, and it's the lawyer's responsibility to pay. Did I say that right, Deborah?
I have a little bit of a follow-up question to that too. What if it's not a program that has been accepted by the NC State Bar, but someone has taken the program knowing it may or may not be accepted, and they give you the materials and say, hey, I think I should get credit for this? How does that work?
So that would be the same idea. If they submit a course for approval that hasn't been previously approved, then if it gets approved, then they would be charged the credit hour attendance fee to the lawyer for them to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments or questions? None appearing, I presume you're ready to vote. All who favor the motion say aye.
Aye.
A little mute delay,
Oh.
but yeah.
All opposed, like sign, please. it looks that the motion has passed unanimously, and we'll ask that Peter and Deborah put it in appropriate format and submit it to the Bar Council.
Thank you for that.
Then, Peter, you want to talk about maybe the groundwork for the study?
Sure, and I probably did a little bit of the introduction in my first part of the report, but this is an important time for the CLE board to look at its rules while we're in development of a new software, with the understanding that a lot of these rules were put in place at the beginning of the program. A lot of our tracking and internal abilities it was easier then, in the sense that there were less lawyers. And so a lot of the issues, in the number of courses and the number of hours taken and the number of reports, has certainly become a lot more difficult to handle as lawyers now go over 30,000 and active in North Carolina. So a lot of the changes that we need to look at are because the rules haven't been changed. The basic structure hasn't been changed in the 30 years of mandatory CLE, and we want to take a look at it and see what we can be doing better, what's better for lawyers, what's better for the bar, what's better for sponsors to be able to efficiently provide courses. And so this kind of review is a really kind of holistic approach to it. We don't want to leave anything out. I have certain ideas and certain proposals that I will share throughout the study. But obviously, this is we want the board to look at this and come up with what you believe is the best solution for CLE going forward, so we can be more efficient and have a better kind of future-proof ourselves in some way, so we're not kind of stuck doing this the old way of things, just that is not working out in some areas. So this study will look at, I think. We will take a look at particular areas, one or two at a time, and try not to bungle them all up together, because then we won't really get to make, it'll be a lot harder to make decisions if we are not focused on one particular area. So I think we should move one or two topics at a time for particular meetings to study and come up with some recommendations, and then tie them all together at the, as we approach near the end of the study, to make sure that all of these recommendations can be tied together in a format with proposed rules that can come out of it that we can submit. We need to have something that is successful enough and well done enough that it would get approval from the council and from the Supreme Court. And so one of the things we're going to do is talk with Chief Justice Newby at the outset in April. The officers are going to speak with him about this process and make sure that he's on board with these big changes, and figure out the way that he prefers that we send potential changes to him, whether it's a full revision of the rules, as in repealing our current rules and rewriting brand new ones, or just making piecemeal changes throughout. And so we're going to try to collaborate with him throughout the process, so we don't this doesn't come as a surprise to the court when something is submitted. But that's the basic idea of the study. It's a big study. It's not this is a big deal. It's hopefully not something that's going to happen every couple of years. This is kind of one of those big times to really look at things and see if we can be doing things better.
Any questions of Peter at this point, and basically the introduction of our plan? All right, Peter, how about discussing your strategy of how to approach this?
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen with some of these issues that I sent out, and these do not have to be all of the issues. These do not have to be the issues that we look at, but these were just some proposed topics and questions that I think we would do. It'd be a good idea for us to look at. And in speaking with George before the meeting, I think we could pair some of these issues together as for particular meetings in study. A big one is what are our CLE requirements going to be? Do we need to make changes on the number of hours that are required? Do we need to make changes on what I'm calling the specialty credits? How often they need to be completed? Should we, at least discuss whether there should be some credit given for pro bono services or other types of non-course completion type of credit? I think that's a big topic. And so that the CLE credit requirement, I think, also ties in well with number 2, with a reporting period, whether there should be a shift from a annual report that you have a certain amount of hours, or what my personal thought is now is moving to a 2-year reporting period where you have to do a certain amount of hours over 2 years, and you split the bar up into opposite years. So we are dealing with, reporting and compliance for half the bar each year. And that brings in a lot of other questions like the grace period and the carryover of credit. And so I think those 2 topics tie in well together for a discussion. And both bring in Rule 0.1518 that we could look at. And so that, to me, would make it good sense for the first step, because once we kind of nail that down, then we can start looking at all the other types of issues that would come about from that. The next topics I think we should look at can tie in well together are the annual reports and the fees and source of funding. So, and Marissa asked a good question about which ones of these are Supreme Court requirements. Well, all of these kind of everything that you see here are in our CLE rules, which were adopted by the court as our rules. And so we don't have, one of the issues with CLE is everything is in a rule. We have 2 sections of a rule. We're one of the only types of programs that has 2 different 2 different sections in our rules. So everything is laid out by rule right now. So it will require a real big rule amendment to do anything, because we have very specific rules regarding CLE where, specific amounts, we have specific years and credit hours. Everything is laid out in the rules. So we can't make a lot of changes without going through the rule process. It's going to be a big look at the rules and making those kind of changes. The annual report requirement, our new software is going to make it a lot easier for lawyers to know if they're compliant, and for us to be able to show that and track that. I think a discussion on whether the need to submit an annual report would be necessary. If it's just a second requirement for a lawyer, if our real focus should be, did the lawyer complete the hours? Why are we then asking them to submit a report to say they completed the hours? If our system can show it and they can see it from there, should that be enough? A big one, and I think numbers 1 and 4 are going to be the biggest parts of our discussion, is changing our fee process. Right now, the bar is kind of like a bill collector where we collect money after the fact. Everything is free up until it's time to submit an attendance fee and then pay sponsor fees or the lawyer's credit hour fees. So we're having to do a lot of collections of things that are owed instead of having money collected at the front end. I've been working with our accountant and looking at all of our numbers to try to figure out if it would be feasible for us to move to a course application fee where money is paid by the sponsor of a course in the application process, and a requirement of submitting an application is paying the fee, so the money is collected at the beginning instead of having an attendance fee. This brings in questions on making sure that we have enough income to fund the programs to which we are tied to fund, like the Equal Access to Justice Commission and the Chief Justice's Commission on Professionalism, and the amount that we annually give to support the lawyer assistance program. So all of that will have to be taken into account if this is the way we would want to move. But if the new software is going to really allow us to have everything done electronically and submitted electronically, and the ability to require a payment on submission without being able to submit it unless you make the payment, I think would make things a lot more efficient and honestly probably reduce costs for sponsors, because depending on the amount that they pay per attendance fees, they likely will be paying less for a course application. With an ultimate goal of hopefully reducing cost of CLE for lawyers, if there's less cost for the sponsors, they could hopefully be incentivized to reduce their CLE costs because they're not having to pay the attendance fees. One issue with this is going to be the amount of money that we could bring in, and so we would need to consider whether there should be an annual CLE assessment on lawyers who are required to take CLE. Let's say they had to pay $20 a year for their CLE, which would arguably be less than what they're having to pay now, which is that $350 per credit hour times 12. They don't always see that because they're paying it sometimes in their in their course fees for for their program, but they are generally assessed those 12-hour or those attendance fees built into their cost. And so if we had an assessment from lawyers that they paid during their membership process, their renewal process of their license, would that additional money combined with a course application fee be enough for us to continue our current support of the external programs and support the CLE program without becoming a bill collector, because all of the money would be collected up front? So I think that's going to be a big discussion. There are obviously issues that I have not considered, I'm sure, and that there are lots of things related to this that we would need to consider. And it's impossible to truly separate all of these things from each other, but to the best that we can in each individual meeting, focusing on the areas that we plan to study would help us with this process. After those two big studies of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, I think we can look at the remainder in a meeting or two together. We should review our exemptions. We've talked about in the past, are there exemptions that need to be updated? Are there new exemptions, or should exemptions be removed? I think that's always a good thing to do during this process. This will involve a lot of general rule cleanup and reorganization. I didn't realize until I started looking at this closely this year that the reason we have two sections in the CLE rules is one is supposed to be CLE rules, and the second section is supposed to be CLE regulations. If you look at them, there's a lot of duplication and a lot of repetition, whereas the first section is supposed to be a very general rule, and then the regulations are supposed to be all the details. But over time, we've kind of just meshed them all together. I don't see the real need to have two sections. If we could get this all into one set of CLE rules, that might be the best option. So I think we would need to look at a full kind of reorganization of the rules. The number 7 is an interesting one, and I think will be worthy of a lot of discussion. And but the officers currently at the bar have raised the thought of in a way to make sure lawyers have access to quality CLE and affordable CLE, that should the state bar create and offer some low cost or free CLE in certain areas that can be accessed on our website, that lawyers could take to help reduce the cost and burden of finding and accessing CLE. So that's something that is, I think, an important right now, an idea from the officers that they feel strongly about for us to look at. And so I think we need to study it. If we were to require a CLE assessment every year for lawyers, tying that into some low cost or free CLE that the bar offers, I think would offset that for lawyers, that I'm paying a certain amount every year, but the bar's giving me an hour each of my specialty credits that they're offering. So there at least be some so-called reward for paying that annual assessment. So that's something that we need to study and look at. because they're, historically they're, we haven't done that. And so that would be a shift that we need to take a look at. And then what do we want in this new CLE software? What do we want lawyers to be able to do? One of my conversations with Judge Dietz and conversations with others is, can lawyers find affordable CLE? Can they find quality affordable CLE? And if we had in our database an ability for lawyers to search CLE courses by cost, would that be an incentive for providers to keep their costs lower so they don't stand out in terms of cost as it relates to people being able to find low cost CLE out there? I think that was a concern that the judge offered and that we hear a lot, is that it's hard to find that affordable CLE for those lawyers that can't afford to pay too much out of pocket to go and take their required hours. So 5 through 8, I think we can look at it in a meeting or two together. 1 and 2, I think, are going to take at least 1 or 2 meetings on their own. 3 and 4 potentially the same. So this is not something that we're going to be able to get done in a couple of weeks. We need to give it the time it takes. No matter how long it takes, we need to get it right and feel that we're all comfortable with whatever big changes we agree on doing. That's the issues I propose. Certainly welcome to. I can add questions or topics to any of these or any new other topics for us to look at. But that's the general framework that I put together for the study.
In looking at the items that Peter has gone over, does anyone have an item that they think is not appropriate for us to study? And likewise, does anyone have any issues that they think we should add to that list? Okay. None appearing. Peter, let's flesh out your list for the next few meetings. Now, I would recommend that we have meetings via Zoom at about this time of day. Maybe you think we can do it in once a month, Peter?
Yeah, I think maybe once a month, or in some months maybe we could get 2 in. But I don't want to overburden you on your service to the board. I will have done a lot of the legwork on options and proposals and studies for us to then get together and talk about. I didn't know, George, if you wanted to split the group up into any subcommittees to look at this, or if you want the full board to look at every issue together.
Well, dividing into 2 subcommittees, I think, would be a more efficient way of looking at it. And then each subcommittee could report back and the full board could review their recommendations, as well as recommendations from members of the other subcommittee.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to do either way. If we had parallel tracks, that would be fine. I certainly don't want anyone to feel that they didn't get a chance to really fully weigh in on any particular topic. And so whatever, if we were to do a subcommittee type of process, I think it'd be really important for the full board to fully hear the report and vet those reports of the subcommittee, because we don't want, these are all very important. And so I don't want anyone to feel like they don't have a chance to disagree with whatever is going to come out of any particular subcommittee.
Does anyone else have any opinion on the idea of dividing into 2 subcommittees and meeting, at least initially, that way, and then reporting back to the whole maybe in 8 to 10 weeks?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
what's the possibility of us meeting in person? Given we're so small and given the big courtroom in the State Bar building, and we could all spread out.
I can
I'll
jump in
pass
on that a
on
little
that
bit,
to-
George. Go ahead. Oh, you go ahead, George.
No, you go ahead.
It is something that in the next few months, I think will become more and more possible. We are hosting a couple of meetings in April for different boards that are going to be very socially distant and masked and all of that. And so during this process, I do think that there will be a time where we can start to do some of these in person. I don't know that we can say we're going to do all of them in person right now, but I think there would be as this moves along, I think we're going to be able to be either a hybrid approach, which we now have the ability, we should have the ability to have people who can't or choose not to attend in person for whatever reason, attend with cameras and on Zoom, and then have those in person who can be there in person. I imagine the new normal for a while is going to be this hybrid approach. And so I think we can accommodate that and continue to work towards doing that.
Yes, sir.
My only comment about in person for a short 1 hour meeting is travel time. And I'm in Charlotte, and so that would be an entire day if I were to do it in person. But I'm hoping that down the road we can or do a retreat again. I just wanted to make that one comment.
Yeah, my suggestion would have been a retreat. Not evening. I'm sorry I didn't make it clear.
Well, Deborah has been working on the concept of a retreat for us, but I believe that the earliest that could occur would be in the autumn.
That's right, George. It's right now we're looking at September the 17th and the 18th, the Friday and Saturday at Pinehurst.
And that perhaps, George, could be a goal where if we can do some of the legwork during the next few months, that the final decisions can and full discussions can be done during that retreat and in person. Maybe that we can put that as kind of our ultimate goal, to have wrapped this up and do the wrapping up of this at the retreat with full discussions and reports from these subcommittees.
George, this is Marissa. Would it make sense to have 3 subcommittees, since Peter sort of broke things down into 3 kind of topic areas?
I'm quite flexible on that. The only reason I said 2 was because our numbers are relatively small, and I would want us to have a subcommittee of at least 3 and preferably 4 or 5. You know, we already have one subcommittee that has only 1 member of the board. So I think it would
I agree with George. I think we can split up that last section, maybe give some of each a part of that to a subcommittee, or they can be something that we talk about in person in September, since they're kind of they're not as technically specific as the ones that are going to be, they require the full study, like credit hours and then the fee structure. And so I think because of our size, 2 might be more efficient for us.
Marissa, anything on? All right. Anyone else want to be heard on the issue of subcommittees or about the division of labor?
And I would just say, George, I think you could, anyone who has a specific desire for one of these particular topics, to let us know. So we, as we break these apart for looking at them, and we'll do our best to try to split those apart evenly. And any of these subcommittee meetings, I think the advantage of a subcommittee meeting is it doesn't require you to be there if you're not on the subcommittee. But if you want to attend, even if you're not on the subcommittee, we will invite anyone to attend. But this would allow us to have more meetings, and at least some of which you're not being asked to attend as part of the subcommittee itself.
George, I think it's a good idea to do the subcommittees, but I would ask that Peter send out all of the materials to everybody so that we all can be getting a head start on what we're going to discuss finally in September, and look at everything that went into the decisions that are made by the subcommittees.
Definitely do that.
Any issue on that?
I'll treat it like we'll send everything out to the full board for every meeting with the understanding that you don't have to attend every meeting if you're not on that subcommittee.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
may I make a question or have a question or ask a question? If we do September, and this is sort of rambling thoughts of your time. If we do it in September, are we thinking about putting it in front of the board or in front of the state bar in the October meeting? I mean, I'm a big fan of working backwards, and so whatever timeline I'll follow, whatever you want. But it'd be good to see, where we stand in all this.
Yeah, Bert, you asked. It's a great question. I just was going through that in my head too. By putting it in front of the CLE, in front of the council in October, it would have to then go for publication and could not be approved by the full council until January, and then on to the Supreme Court. So we would miss out on the 2022 year. We would have to have it all in place for 2023, which would ultimately be fine as it relates to the temporary rule that we are proposing for the diversity and inclusion credit, because that already encompasses the 2022 year. But the ones that, any new changes would have to come into effect in 2023, which would require us to develop our program in the new software with the current rules. My only thought is I don't want to rush this just in order to get it done. So we want to make sure we get it right. I think we could probably gauge whether we're making enough progress to have something before the council in July, maybe a portion of this in front of the council in July that would allow things to move a little faster. But you raise a good point. If we don't have anything in front of the council until October, then we're going to be pushed into having these changes become effective in 2023.
I don't think that's a bad thing, as long as we lay out the expectations to everybody and to the council and to the officers that, this is, submit a true timeline and just make it as hard as we possibly can, the timeline, so that it would propel us to act.
And it would certainly give us time to have the lawyers be prepared for these big changes. Instead of, if something were to be approved in July and then go to the court, there wouldn't be a lot of time for anyone to make their, learn about all these new changes and get to know them before the 2022 year begins. And so if it were to be approved in early 2022, we would have time to get all the information out during 2022. So it becomes, can get off and running right at the beginning of 2023.
Mr. I have one more question, please.
Okay.
When we start through this process, I would just respectfully ask that the state bar staff let us know if there are storm clouds or rumblings from different corners of the state bar, to include the counselors, about what we're doing, why we're doing it, and what we're hoping to do here. Because I'm already hearing rumblings as a bar counselor about what we're doing, and I just want to make sure we don't get blindsided. We do all this work, and then all of a sudden we start moving sideways, and it just goes off the tracks. So whatever the issue is, if we can go ahead and address it head on, what those issues are, and not wait for publication or at a very contentious bar meeting in October, we would be most appreciative. Thank you.
Yep, and I think giving reports to the executive committee on the progress of what we're doing will be important. And also the fact that we're going to live stream all of these meetings to, make sure that anyone who wants to be paying attention can, and we'll keep keep everyone apprised of the progress.
And I think it's fair to say that we've already heard some complaint about at least one of our proposals. So I don't believe that it's going to be a time specific thing that will prevent complaints. I think we can let certain entities know of what we're working on, and they will complain about it until it becomes a rule, and probably thereafter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Very well. If each of you would look at these bullet points and send Peter your the issues that you would prefer to address as a member of a subcommittee, then we can use those in fashioning the subcommittee. Peter, you think we can have the subcommittees divided up by, say 2 weeks from today?
Yes, definitely. If you'll let me know your preferences, there might be everyone might want to talk about CLE credit requirements because that's that's a juicy topic. But if you can let me know if you have any interest in the fee issue, that would be really helpful to make sure we have people who are interested in that, because I think that's going to be a real big shift. And we'll get the subcommittees made up, and hopefully we can schedule the first set of meetings.
Very well. Does anyone have any other business to come before the board? None appearing, I will declare this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it.